have to say, listening to the podcast, one of the things that in the new format that they've done is when you get into the subscriber section, they read another, hate mail, which is everybody really misses Adam Ford.
And this is where they wear the
smoking jackets.
Hugh Hefner smoking jackets,
yes.
right?
Yeah, but it's also, they've read several of the emails back and forth between Seth and the Babylon Bee listeners, because there are people that will write in and they'll have these huge complaints, and Seth just writes back basically like, nuh-uh, and then just waits for these responses. And there was, in a recent episode, they actually interviewed Seth.
With the lady?
Yeah, the back and forth that you
too.
had was absolutely awesome. So you've done an incredible job of creating a community within, especially within the subscriber base of the three news entities that you have. So Discern, the comment section tends to be very serious. With Not the Bee, it's got more of a satirical feel to it.
But it's real.
In the comment section, because people are just more sarcastic because they know that it's a joke site.
I think Not the Bee is my favorite, by the way.
Yeah, and then the Babylon Bee is just incredible as people are pitching headlines and all kinds of things. But you've mentioned a couple of times about the difficulty in writing satire, and then people in the news cycle, especially people that are politically opposed to a lot of the things that you're talking about ideologically, that are saying that this is a big ruse. And recently you said you guys were in a New York Times article where they're trying to paint you as people that are purposefully spreading false information, that this might be something that's affecting your Facebook algorithm and the way that you guys are actually able to monetize.
Yeah, it's been an ongoing, recurring problem where we have either personalities like guys like Brian Stelter or Donnie O'Sullivan with CNN,
so great,
or actual columnists or reporters. Kevin Roos, who handles like a misinformation blog or contributes to a misinformation blog for New York Times, and now this other guy, I'm trying to remember his name. It's something Isaac. I think Isaac's his last name. Anyway, yeah, he just published a piece a couple days ago talking about the challenges that Facebook has had dealing with satire, and how sometimes, it's difficult for their algorithms or even their employees to like pick up on what's satirical, what's not. How do they handle this stuff? Do they treat it as misinformation, or do they treat it as humor and comedy? What is their process? So it was dealing with some of those issues, but they brought us up as an example of a far-right misinformation site that was abusing the label satire to stay on those platforms, even though they don't allow for misinformation. And it was in the discussion of how there's a lot of this going on, that a lot of this stuff was slipping through the cracks, and Facebook was having a hard time dealing with it. But we were the only site they mentioned that falls under this category of far-right misinformation sites. And they specifically said that we traffic in misinformation. So we made a lot of noise about that, immediately kind of got on Twitter and sort of posting about it. I sent an email out to our followers today. It's a really big deal. And the reason it's a big deal is because, for one thing, it's false and defamatory. You don't want people slandering you and maligning your business and misrepresenting you, right? But there's more to it than that, because the argument that they're making that we are a disinformation hub, that we are purposefully abusing the label satire, the appropriate response, if that's what we're actually doing for these social networks, is to shut us down. And that's what seems to be the goal here, is that they get us to a place where it's clearly established in the news media, like on New York Times, Rolling Stone, CNN, wherever, and on Wikipedia, that the Babylon Bee is not actually a satire site. It's a misinformation site. They pretend to be a satire site. They keep trying to get that message out there. It's the narrative they're trying to establish. If they succeed in doing that, and we don't successfully push back on them, then it's only a matter of time before we get banned on the major social networks. And yes, that absolutely affects traffic and monetization. So it puts our business in jeopardy for sure.
That was one of the questions that I had for you was, as the leader, as the chief executive officer, what was the most ridiculous situation that you've been in? Snopes, the New York Times, Facebook, but it seems like it's kind of coming from every direction. Do you feel like that? Have you been living that, or do you feel like there's just one real group that is just continually popping up?
Well, Snopes, it was so recurring because they would continually fact check us. It's gone beyond Snopes now. There's other fact checkers that are getting involved, and I think it's the most egregious examples of this stuff are when it's the most absurd thing you can possibly think of. We had the first incident with Snopes that was really notable was when they fact-checked our story about how CNN had purchased industrial washing machines.
Which is brilliant.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Great idea. Obviously satire.
Yeah.
USA Today recently fact-checked one about how the Ninth Circuit Court had overturned Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death. Now, that's
and they said
really
fact check.
absurd
This is not true. Yeah. Yeah.
These things, like these fact checks, are so funny because USA Today, they cited 15 sources and wrote a lengthy refutation of that joke. It was a joke. They could have just said this is satire, but they're not really interested in just making it very clear that we're satire. They want to treat it as though this is a really big deal. This was a claim. We made a claim, and they have to try to fact check this claim. And they're generating this lengthy paper trail of refuting our jokes that people supposedly believe. I don't believe for a second that anyone thought Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death had been overturned. I mean, that is
absurd.
Yeah.
I mean, from my perspective, I'll just say this real quick. It just gets funnier. I don't have to deal with it. It just gets funnier to see the some of the mainstream media and the left response, far leftist response to some of these jokes. It just gets funnier and funnier and funnier the more serious that they take it.
Yeah, the one that I keep seeing come up is the AOC that she strangles. Yeah, she strangles herself with her shoelaces, and then in the headline it says in parentheses, because she's so dumb. Like it's no longer, the joke is almost spoiled in the headline now because they've added that into it. But that's still one that not only is causing outrage, but the people are like, "This isn't true." Like,
yeah,
of course it's not true. She's still talking.
Well, I think you get a lot of enjoyment out of it. I mean, to some extent, we do too. What it's actually a good thing. I think it's telling in terms of it's an indicator that what we're doing is working. We're over the right target, right? We are obviously touching a nerve because people are responding. They're bristling in response to what we're saying, what we're doing, and they're trying to find a way to shut us down and shut us up. So, I mean, that's an indication that we're doing something right, in my opinion. If the New York Times was writing glowing reviews of us and loving us, I would be deeply concerned. I don't want the New York Times liking us and loving us. I'm much happier with them hating us. I certainly don't want them defaming us and mischaracterizing us, but I also don't want them writing glowing reviews of us, if you know what I mean.
Right.
So it is certainly, I think, a positive thing when looked at from one perspective. It is, though, from a business perspective, a threat to the business when you have both the media and the social network companies working together. In the case of that Ruth Bader Ginsburg fact check, that was USA Today. Guess where USA Today gets the money from to pay fact checkers?
Where's that?
Grants.
Oh, wow.
So Facebook's paying USA Today to do fact checking and then looking at the fact checks and saying, oh, you guys are publishing false information. You don't belong on this platform. Well, they set it up. It's like a huge setup to be able to knock down sites that are publishing misinformation. So, up to this point, they've been willing to say satire is different than misinformation. But what the media is trying to do, what the New York Times is right now trying to do, is to blur those lines with the Babylon Bee in particular and say, hey, now wait a minute. Well, satire should be protected. The Babylon Bee doesn't even qualify it. Well, I'm Seth Dillon, CEO of the Babylon Bee, and I'm here on the Reverend and Reprobate podcast, one that you should absolutely never waste your time with.